aqua friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Nicole and I have a step-by-step tutorial for you today for a watercolor raccoon. This is the final product, and right now I'm going to go through the supplies with you that I used for this project. You could also find the supplies listed in the description below of the video. So I always use Arches or the Hahnemuhl watercolor paper. Those are the two professional watercolor papers that I use. So some of the brushes that I used were the Black Silver Round 8. Pretty much this was the workhorse for most of the painting. And for the more smaller detailed areas, this is actually a 6. I think I said a 4 in my video, but a 6 would probably do it as well, as long as your brush has a very fine point like this one. And that's for the detail work around his eyes. And the rigger brush, also known as a script liner brush, I used that quite a bit to make all these textures, the cute fluffy fur. And then as your paper's drying, you want to kind of blend some areas and not have as hard of an edge. I just use a fan brush for that. So these are the brushes that I used. As far as the colors go, any kind of sky blue, a very watery mixture. This is the only time I used the blue was for the eyes there. So that's pretty much it. Now, as far as the green, I used sap green and hooker's green for the grass area. That's also very watery mixture. And starting off with the lightest layers, I used either yellow ochre or raw sienna. Will get you that cream color for his under fur. Now for the darker fur, I did use some Van Dyke brown. Burnt umber would also be a good one to use. It's not as orangey as the burnt sienna. And I used this very minimally, just in some warmer parts of his fur. Okay, so very, very dark. The darkest parts are going to be the sepia and of course the neutral tint, which is neutral, it's gray, for the deepest, darkest areas. I kind of like mixing these two together for his eyes and his nose, and especially around his mask. So some fun facts about raccoons is that they have very dexterous hands. They were actually named after their hands. The English word raccoon means animals that scratch with their hands. So, and as we know, raccoons can get into all sorts of mischief and open just about anything, even your garbage cans. They can be found all over the globe thanks to mankind, but they are indigenous to North and South America. There are 6 different species of raccoons. That's it. Let's get painting. Once you have drawn a light sketch of your raccoon, we're going to work wet on wet watercolor technique. So first we're just wetting his cute little face and his body. I'm using a number 8 round brush for this. By wetting the paper first, it's going to give us very soft edges. And we're going to use the lightest colors for our first layer. We always want to work light to dark in watercolor because it is a process of building up layers. I'm starting off using my raw sienna. You could also use yellow ochre, along with some Van Dyke brown for the darker areas of his face. So in this stage, we're basically building a roadmap for ourselves. The first stages of watercolor is always known as the ugly stage because it's light and it doesn't look like much yet, but it is a great foundational roadmap. I really do believe that if we plan ahead when we do watercolor and we have a very fantastic sketch to follow and you did some color swatching, you're prepared, then you're not going to get lost because you have your map to follow, and it's a good tried and true map. You just have to trust the map that you're making and build up these layers. So I'm coming in with my Van Dyke Brown. I'm also using a fan brush to soften the edges. Our paper will start drying, so we have very limited amounts of time to get down this roadmap that we're working on. If your edges start to dry and they aren't as soft, you could use a damp brush or a fan brush like I'm doing to soften that out. Re-wetting his body a little bit because it's drying with some clean water. Doing the same techniques that we did with the head, we are laying down his body wet on wet. So where the darker areas are, I'm using my Van Dyke Brown. In the lighter areas, I'm using the yellow ochre or the raw sienna. So with these soft edges, we're making his fur nice and fluffy. And who doesn't like fluffy fur? Now that that first layer has dried, we're going to go back in and we're going to do a second layer. And I'm coming in with my really strong contrasting colors, using some sepia for the fur in his ears, and dragging out this pigment with a script liner brush. Okay, getting that mask around his eyes and on his face. Notice how I lay it down with my big brush, and then I take the script liner to feather it out. Okay, and we always want to paint in the direction that the fur is going. Laying down, getting that block of color in, using the script liner brush to feather it out. And by doing this, notice that I am just using a light flicking motion of my hand in order to draw in this fur. So basically in watercolor, we are building our values slowly. So around the area where there's light, and I'm just going with a very dry brush. This is also known as dry brushing, and it's giving us texture, but it's also letting us see the layers beneath the dry brushing. So it's pretty cool. Remember that you always want to paint in the direction that the fur is going. Now another technique that I love to do with animal fur is the watercolor lifting technique, where we use a damp brush. Okay, so it can't be sopping wet, but we use a damp brush and we lift in the lighter areas. This is going to bring our lighter areas of our paper back where his fur is lighter, and it also gives us a more three-dimensional look. So we are going to do the second layer of the fur on his body in the exact same manner that we did for his face. So with this second layer that we are building up, you could already tell that he is coming together quite nicely, and we're starting to get out of that ugly stage of watercolor. So we're following our map and it's not letting us down. I am using a script liner brush to draw in wet on dry watercolor technique some of the darker fur, and this is making him extra fluffy looking. So working on his eyes, I am putting in a very watery mixture of blue to reflect the sky, and I am using neutral tint mixed with my sepia for his nose, and I'll also use this same mixture when I do work on the inside of his eyes. Now there are some warmer colors in his fur, and after lifting out those areas, I'm able to bring back those warmer tones. So I am coming in with my burnt sienna for this. Now that his eyes are dry, I'm coming in with a very dark mixture to work more on his cute little mask. It needs to be a lot darker. And when anything is too stark for you, it's like the brush strokes are just too defined, you can soften them with a fan brush. So notice I'm always painting in the direction the fur goes. Around his eyes, I am using my number 4 round brush. It is a black silver series brush that holds a lot of water, but the tip is so fine that it almost works like a detail brush. You can find the link for this brush in the description below. All the supplies are listed there actually. Doing a little bit more lifting around his eyelids. And around his ears. Notice how this is giving these areas a more three-dimensional look. So I'm going back down to the body and adding another layer on there. Where it's light, I'm adding in my warmer colors. And then going for the very dark colors that we need under his chin. And on his cute little paw. So it's handy to have another brush ready to soften out any edges that are too contrasting for you. I want to leave his paw sort of out of focus, so I have wet that area, but it does have to have those darker colors in there to separate it from his body. So I'm working on getting those very deep colors with my neutral tint and sepia. Back to his eye, using some neutral tint and getting in the bottom part of his eye, along with the shadow of his eyelid and the reflection of his eyelashes. And of course we have to give him his eyeliner. This really makes his eyes pop. Eyeliner on the other eye. He looks great with his eyeliner, don't you think? So these are basically the finishing touches. I'm getting those darks as dark as they need to be. So I didn't really want a background, but he needs to be staged in some sort of respect. So I opted for putting just a clump of grass where he's sitting. And I'm doing this in a very loose manner using sap green and hooker's green. I'm adding a lot of water to the bottom so that it could just bleed and play on the paper. I added some splatters. I like to call these magical sprinkles, just for some good measure. Using my script liner brush to drag that pigment out to make the grass blades. Last but not least, I am using some bleed-proof white to get his adorable whiskers in there. And for some good measure, a few more of those magical sprinkles. I hope you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you got value out of this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate your support as always. Thank you for watching.